So the U.S. has a long, successful history of preventing, containing, and eradicating foreign animal diseases from the U.S. cattle herd. And this success was accomplished through decades of cooperation between the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, and America's cattle producers. But 2 decades ago, the USDA attempted to force America's cattle producers to register their premises with the federal government, to individually identify all their cattle with electronic identification, or EID, ear tags, and to record their animals' movement in a government's database. Now, the USDA's onerous plan mimicked that of countries with constitutional monarchies, such as Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Countries where individual freedoms, liberties, and property remain limited by government control. But the United States shed itself of such government control centuries ago, when it formed a government that both granted and respected individual freedoms, liberties, and property like no other. Unsurprisingly, American citizens resoundingly said no to the USDA's onerous plan, and the USDA retreated. Then a decade ago, the USDA pushed what it called a flexible solution. It promised cattle producers they could choose among a variety of animal identification devices, from low-cost devices with only printed numbers to high-cost devices with EID. And the USDA said its flexible solution was endorsed by the animal health officials charged with conducting disease programs. And in the years since implementing its flexible solution, the USDA conducted tests and found that on average, states could conduct successful disease tracebacks of an animal shipped out of state back to the animal's state of origin in less than 1 hour. That means the current flexible solution allows state officials to trace back an animal much faster than it typically takes a cattle producer to gather and load a truck full of cattle from their farm or ranch. Now, the USDA has now identified 2 areas that could yet further improve this already unprecedented disease traceback time. First, it said it could eliminate typos when the 9-digit identification number on an ear tag is transcribed to a database. And it said it could eliminate problems inherent to the paper records that must accompany all animals that cross state lines. But on April 26th, the USDA announced its final rule that only addresses the first of the 2 areas it said were deficient. The final rule mandates the exclusive use of EID and eliminates the other promised forms of animal identification that the USDA's own testing shows will allow animal disease tracebacks in less than 1 hour. Now, the USDA estimates this new mandate imposed only on cattle producers will cost cattle producers tens of millions of dollars each year, without any means of recovering this mandatory cost from the marketplace. And worse, while imposing this onerous and costly mandate on America's cattle farmers and ranchers, the USDA does not require any of the accompanying paperwork to be electronically readable, such as the Interstate Certificate of Veterinary Inspection, even though these paper records function in tandem with the EID ear tags and are indispensable for conducting animal disease tracebacks. Now, this glaring deficiency renders the EID mandate arbitrary at best. But there's more. The final rule will not subject any more cattle to EID than are already subjected to the flexible solution, which enables traceback in less than 1 hour. This means the final rule does nothing at all to expand the coverage of animal identification devices, either low-cost, non-electronic, or high-cost EIDs in the U.S. cattle herd. Now, given the final rule provides no appreciable improvement to animal disease traceability due to these deficiencies, what's really driving the USDA's EID mandate? The USDA discloses this in its official press release that accompanied its final rule, and it says exports are driving this final rule. In the 2023, the USDA did not produce enough beef to meet domestic beef consumption, though it exported 3 billion pounds of beef, representing only 11% of the 27 billion pounds of beef produced in the United States. Thus, the final rule imposes an EID mandate on 100% of our nation's 622,000 remaining beef cattle producers for the benefit of the small minority of beef cattle producers whose cattle produce beef that is actually exported. Now, the beneficiaries of the USDA final rule are multinational ear tag manufacturers for whom the USDA is granting a guaranteed market demand for their EID products, ear tags, and related equipment, and the multinational beef packers, whose continued access to foreign markets, whether or not a disease outbreak occurs, will be paid for annually by the hundreds of thousands of U.S. cattle producers upon whom the USDA is forcing its EID mandate. Congress must act swiftly to protect America's cattle farmers and ranchers from the USDA's excesses. If it does not, we must all question the legitimacy of our unique form of government and its ability to protect the freedoms, liberty, and property of its people. Well, I'm Bill Bullard with RCAF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Have a productive week, and thank you. Goodbye.